At the end of all this, Texas is going to be considered the tread on me daddy state.
If you ask me personally, I would say that Texas has been that state for a long time because there are a lot of people who are openly mistreated by so many different things, yet they don't take action to fix it. In fact, in Texas, you'll often hear them complaining or joking about how Californians are so litigious, how they sue each other all the time, when in reality, there have been multiple instances that I've witnessed personally where someone had a case against their employer or against their government, and yet they refused to go forward with it. They refused to hold the people in power accountable. So, because of that, it was one of the main reasons why I wanted to leave for California. The minimum wage in Texas, for instance, is still $7.25 an hour. It hasn't changed since 2009, and if you're working as a server or a waiter, you can be paid $2.13 an hour and only receive a paycheck if you're making less than $7.25 an hour. That happened to me when I was working for a movie theater chain called Star Cinema Grill from 2018 to 2019. And yet, the cost of living in Texas is rising along with the rest of the country, so people are still being paid less on average, and yet things are less affordable than they used to be. My first ever W-2 job was at Jimmy John's. I worked there for about 5 months in 2015, making $7.25 an hour. While I was working there, they started capping people's schedules at 28 hours a week because, according to them, if they worked any more than that, then they would have to receive Obamacare, in their own words. So the employer didn't want to pay certain benefits out to the employees, yet they would still schedule them as if they were working their previous schedules. So what would happen was that these delivery drivers would be working on the clock, and then they would clock out once they reached 28 hours a week and continue working for tips, which is highly illegal. That's also not the only job where I've seen that happen. I've seen people clock out so they don't have overtime hours because they will get in trouble if they work overtime. Yet they're so overworked and understaffed because of things like the holiday season that they continue to work anyways to remain in good standing with management, which is, again, illegal and unfair to the workers. The scheduling in Texas is also ridiculous. Typically, I would get it the night before the work week started. So if I were to start work on a Monday, my schedule would come in on a Sunday night, which made it incredibly difficult to plan things because my schedule would constantly be changing. When I moved to California, one thing that really surprised me is that my work schedule is laid out 2 weeks in advance, and they have to pay me extra if they change it against my will. So I have to approve any schedule changes that are being made within 2 weeks, which is really cool if you ask me. When I worked at Star Cinema Grill from 2018 to 2019, they would only tell you what time you were to come in, not when you left. So my schedule would just say 11 a.m. And so I could be working for 3 or 4 hours, or I could be working a full 12-hour shift, and I would have no idea. It made it incredibly difficult to have a schedule and routine under those circumstances. I've seen other things happen too. For instance, I had a coworker collapse from heat stroke and they decided not to sue the company for it, even though they had every right to. There's a lot of shady stuff that happens in the film, photography, and music world too. For instance, I had someone who was propositioned by a sexual predator. They denied that proposition and they were blacklisted from performing in most of the major venues in Houston for like at least a year. And there were other people who knew that the person in question was a predator, and yet they held on to that information because they wanted to use it as leverage. I've had clients not pay me for the work that I've done for them, and that's happened to a lot of my friends too. It's happened with some more famous clients who people are so excited to work with that they don't have a solid contract, and so they excitedly work with them, and then months go by and then years go by and they still don't get paid for the work that they did. Granted, it's not all like that because Texans do band together and stand up for themselves occasionally. For instance, I try to keep up with the environment in the state because it's a big thing to consider. The city of Houston uses a lot of groundwater, so it is gradually sinking from the usage of groundwater, and they're developing residential areas on top of what used to be natural wetlands, which makes them extremely prone to flooding. So if you're local to the city, you know, don't live here, here, and here because those places will flood like crazy, but also don't live here, here, and here because those are cancer clusters, and then don't live over here or here because you're right next to the refineries and you're going to have bad air quality. For example, on Christmas of last year, a federal panel ruled in favor of victims of flooding during Hurricane Harvey in 2017. And in another case against ExxonMobil that was filed in 2010, just recently, ExxonMobil was found guilty of violating the Clean Air Act, emitting toxic, carcinogenic, and ozone-forming chemicals for 16,386 days, almost 45 years, near Baytown, Texas. And of course, there are multiple ongoing legal battles that are happening all over the state. For instance, there's one over cancer clusters in Houston, specifically creosote. Creosote, if you're unfamiliar, is a preservative put over wood to help prevent it from rotting that happens to be highly carcinogenic. And so there was a factory that produced creosote in Houston, and that creosote eventually seeped into the groundwater, and then that factory was shut down in 1984, and yet no soil testing was done in the area until 2019, when people started complaining about there being too many many people getting cancer in the area. In Amarillo, there's a group called 806 Data Center Resistance who are currently fighting over a data center project in the city because they are asking for 2.5 million gallons of water per day. If you're familiar with the city of Amarillo, well, it's in the middle of the desert, so water is quite scarce out there, and people are concerned that they're going to continually ask for more and more water that will not go to the people who live there. There's also been multiple attempts to sue the Texas State Power Grid, or ERCOT, because of its failures during the 2021 winter storm Uri. However, those have failed, and in a 2023 Texas State Supreme Court ruling, ERCOT was given sovereign immunity, which protects it from further lawsuits. There was also Zorowski v. Texas, where 22 plaintiffs came forward in a class action lawsuit against the state regarding the state abortion ban. However, it was unsuccessful, and the Texas Supreme Court ruled in favor of the state in 2024. So what I saw a lot in Texas were people being actively mistreated and then usually rationalizing themselves out of standing up for themselves. And if you live in the state of Texas, would you say that you saw the same thing? Would you agree or would you disagree? I would like to hear what you have to say.